Last of Us has been around since PewDiePie's face cam quality was like this.
What a fucking...
And the game that Sony has milked for ages, spawning multiple remakes, all for just 2 games. 2 games! But now gone are the games, because Season 2 is out. And despite playing the game multiple times, the show still finds a way to surprise me. And also find ways to make me mad. But the question still remains, like, what are the changes from the show to the games? And how does this change the narrative of The Last of Us?
Steve's lava chicken.
Let's start with Episode 1. Now it starts where we left off on Season 1, where Joel swore to Ellie what happened on Salt Lake. But the show did something different.
Look at them graphics.
We are introduced to Abby very early on in the show. In the games, Abby was not introduced until we get our first patrol assignment by Jesse. And not only that, we got hints on what the character's goals and motives are. Well, some people like it, and it's probably because it's just a show. But in the games, she was introduced later, and it is by design, and I'll talk about this more on episode 2. Another interesting thing is we get to see what happened before New Year's Eve, which means we get more perspective on Jackson, and especially Joel. He is a political figure, and he is part of the council on Jackson, though he specializes managing on housing, which actually makes sense because he is a carpenter, and this is an amazing way to expand more of the character, because we never get to see this in the game, or Joel in a normal society setting. Jackson looks so much better in the show than the games, and the episode explores more about Jackson, making it feel more alive. You can see people working on construction, people with jobs. I got you there, didn't I? That's right. Anyways, so we get to the first patrol, and this is where Ellie starts to act a little bit off, as she acts like killing clickers would be fun? Huh? Ellie being a badass does not come from overconfidence. She gets it from sheer survival instinct. And one of the survival instincts is not purposely putting yourself into danger. Like, come on, bro. In the game, yes, they are in patrol. And yes, they are meant to clear as much as infected as they can. But there has to be some level of seriousness and the feeling of risk. Because, I don't know, they can potentially die. And that's not what I'm seeing here in the show. But anyways, let's talk about Joel. What I like about Pedro is the way he portrays Joel on the show. He gives more room for the character to express more than what he is in the game. First of all, his trauma. We never get the chance to see Joel struggle on trauma in the games. But in the show, he displayed it in more occasions. This vulnerable side of Joel makes him more relatable, makes him more detailed, and a person who only tried to make the most out of a difficult decision. And adding the therapist makes this more brilliant. For now, we have the reason to explore deeper on how he actually feels, on why he made those decisions, and how is he dealing it every single day. Because deep down inside, he just wanted to be a dad and would do anything to get that life back. Right as where the game began, they swapped the scene from Tommy, and I believe it is one of the coolest scenes because it encapsulates everything about Joel.
Did you do something to her?
I got you.
Did you hurt her? Then what? What did you do?
I saved her.
Well, it's time. I believe that this episode is the best out of all the series. Though minor things had changed, like how Dina is patrolling with Joel instead of being with Tommy, Jesse being with Ellie instead of being Dina, and Tommy stayed back in Jackson fighting the horde of zombies. Remember I mentioned on episode 1 on how Abby was introduced early on the series? Well, in the beginning of the episode, we are shown a flashback on her being in the hospital, giving us more context on why they are coming after Joel. I honestly don't like this kind of approach, and let me tell you why. Abby in the game was mysterious. You really don't know what her true intentions are, and all you know is they are looking for somebody. She was like a time bomb that nobody knew was ticking, and when she finally did what she came here to do, we are left shocked, upset, and offended on how the story turned out. Unless you saw the leak back in the day,
it's a video game. You gotta play it.
This was the most heartbreaking moment in gaming history, and it was the most ambitious move from Naughty Dog to go with this narrative. For you to build a compelling story of a father who was an empty husk of a man, but as soon as he took a girl across the country, he starts to find himself again. Unironically, Ellie saving Jewel, but then goes down as one of the most brutal cutscenes just for a narrative is insane, but an effective way to be immersed with the characters emotionally. Revenge is not something you take because the story tells you to, but you feel it within Ellie. This rage, this hatred, it carried you on throughout the story. So for the fact that this was done by someone who we never knew their intentions were from the beginning, just to come out and beat the living shit out of our beloved character and walk away. 10 out of 10 rage bait. Naughty Dog was really ahead of its time. But this does not end with Ellie and Jewel. Jackson had its own battle, but it was never shown in the games. It was a battle that we never knew we needed, cause it was this epic. Truly a spectacle of an episode. A lot has happened, but this episode was truly about loss. Loss of families, a friend, a brother, and a father. It happened unexpectedly, and when it does, the loudest thing you will hear is silence. I'm surprised that there's an episode dedicated to this. I mean, the amount of mental gymnastics for this episode to work truly blows my mind, because I believe the source material that they use for this episode is only about 20 minutes of gameplay. This is where Ellie visits the gravestone, goes to Jewel's house, performs an Aiden Ross, and then goes to Seattle. And the amount of content that they birthed into this episode is truly phenomenal. Some say this is the weakest among of all the episodes, but I think it's the most deeply looked upon. Starting off with the aftermath on the death of Jewel. Seeing Tommy with Jewel's dead body is brutal. Not only you lost part of your home, but lost the only brother you have. What I find cool is in the game, Tommy was the first one to go after Abby. So he left a letter to Maria saying he's going to Seattle alone, wanting to bring these people to justice. Sound familiar? Because in the show, this letter was instead made by Ellie to convince the council to go after Abby. And Dina was written a better motive to go after Abby. In the game, there wasn't really a similar desire to go after Abby, other than Dina wanted to come with because she wants to be with Ellie. This all changed because in the show, Dina was there when Jewel was murdered. And more to that, Dina displays a strong bond with Jewel, other than it feels like they only knew each other in the game. So it made it more believable for Dina to follow on Ellie's crusade. The war between the Seraphites and the WLF is more highlighted on the show, but in the game, it is more subtle when it comes to inside lore, like how sometimes they mistakenly see you as a wolf or a scar. Naughty Dog has mastered this style of storytelling, that it doesn't blatantly tell you what's going on. As you get immersed through these territories, the graffiti, and the violence, you start to see a long conflict between these two factions unfolding in front of you. I'm glad they stay close to the source material when Ellie visited Jewel's house. Even goes to the fact that they kept this scene where Ellie found Jewel's jacket and begins to pour tears as she is flooded by the memories when Jewel was around. The feeling of regret only happens when everything is too late, and it is presented beautifully in this scene on how our world shatters and you can never find the pieces again. No matter how hard you pick yourself up, losing someone, especially the only family you have, is suffocating, and all you can do is to never forget the times where you were still together. Finally, we are in Seattle, day 1, and this marks the day on Ellie's crusade to find Abby. And everything seems good so far. Streets are empty, there are no infected, until we get to see Isaac torturing a Scar, and this just sets the tone of Seattle. What I like about this scene is how it is established on how barbaric this people has evolved into. The distinction between Jackson and Seattle can be identified by the community's psyche. On one side, we have a place where people can defend on as a safe haven, despite the limited resources, versus a place where people are living on two opposite ideologies. But it always comes down when humanity never comes to an agreement. War is always the result of this disconnect. And the way how Jeffrey Wright and Ryan Mason delivered that scene really solidified the aggression between these two factions. Now both of them are passing on the blame on who started this and that, and when their backs against the wall, they would gladly accept each other's offer of war. This is the part of the video where I become dissatisfied with the series. It is underwhelming to see the delivery on this show is not the standards on the original source material. I mean, there are changes that I absolutely love, and it is incredible what the studio can pull off, but the inconsistency when it comes to term of action and line delivery can be detrimental to the storyline, especially when the source material you're using has one of the most spectacle, gruesome, and ambitious storyline that has ever come out in gaming history. The level of brutality Ellie delivers on the show pales in comparison to the game. It lacks the fundamental aspects of a revenge story, for I believe her doing less defeats the purpose of a narrative that will soon drown you of guilt and regret, because the price you pay is solely reflected on your own choices and the actions you have inflicted on the people you sought after to destroy. I'm not gonna say much about this episode because I think this episode is just whack. I don't like it because it suffers the same problem like in episode 4. The whole episode is not bad. The environment has always been consistent in the show, from the theater to Seattle, through the building's interior and to the park, until we get to the characters and everything becomes a mess. I'm now starting to believe that people writing this show does not understand who these characters really are and what were they like in the game. Like this scene where Dina was triangulating on a map, Ellie said she hates math? It is also kind of embarrassing that Cascina Caradonna, who is the character model of Dina, knows more about Ellie than the writers of the show.
Why, looking stupid? That's not the word I would use. Really? What word then?
Ellie's super smart. The characterization of Ellie being dumb is weird. In my humble opinion, and I know nothing, okay, and I'm not a writer, we could have started the episode there. She didn't need to be triangulating. Ellie didn't need to be dumb.
Like, what are we doing, bro? I think the viewership has lost at this point, and I think this is about time where I start to not get excited for the next episode. And we're still in Seattle day 2. I've watched this episode 3 times just to confirm I'm not tripping. Like, this episode is just boring to watch. Like, where the part where stalkers attacked Ellie and Dina, then Dina had to lock herself in the cage, but Ellie just got her ass whooped because she's just standing there. And this is the same character that can 1v1 a bloater, but she's surrounded, there's nothing she can. But it gives us something that invokes action, like throw a bottle in the stalker's face or hit him with a wood or something. Give us a something that at least represents the games. This is the same Ellie where she get to torture Nora but showed hesitation. She hasn't done this before. Torturing someone to get information is messed up, and you can see Ellie reluctantly delivers her line.
You Firefly?
She can't even maintain eye contact because she doesn't want any of this. She just wants to know where Abby is. And then we get to the Ellie is tugged between her sense of morality and her drive for revenge. But when the moment Nora mentions about Jewel, this is where Ellie just snapped and has lost her grip on morality, and so let her fueled emotion take over. What The Last of Us did that millions of audience appreciate in the game is how Joel and Ellie will always be the characters you want to see together with. Sometimes they goof around, other times they have each other's backs, but when it comes to why these characters work, does not only come with their chemistry, but it comes to the fact that they need each other. But that bond will get tested when lies starts to catch up, and now you have to start to deal with reality. What I love about what they did in this episode is how they continue to open up Joel's character again. Joel in the games has always been this grumpy, tough, and doesn't want to share his feelings to other than people he considers family. But I think it comes to the limits of gameplay, where he does not have the opportunity to do so. Now we get this opportunity in the show as we start to delve deep into Joel's childhood. We get to know that Joel and Tommy are victims of abuse, and so was their fathers. But what really sets the tone of this episode is not the violence that these people had to endure, but the constant strive to be better. In the world of Last of Us, violence is a constant cycle that will probably never be eradicated. We can see this through Ellie and Abby, who both lost their fathers and now has the path of continuous murder spree and hatred that doesn't seem to have an end to it. Also, what made an interesting point is what Gail said to Tommy back on episode 3. Gail said,
Turns out nurture can only do this much. The rest is nature.
Is it nurture that Joel's fatherly gestures taught Ellie compassion? Or is it nature that promotes a life that could lead to complete desolation? Either way, both could be true. And it is true that nature can't only be linked to violence, but it can also be the driving force for us to improve and promote growth, like what Joel would have wanted for Ellie. The deteriorating factor between Joel and Ellie's relationship is that Ellie realizing something is just not adding up, and how this is delivered in the show is done remarkably well. In the game, Ellie finds out via tape recorder recorder that is left by a firefly. Her knowing partially the truth, Jewel had to tell her what really happened in Salt Lake. But the show took a different approach, and it gives a significant role on the character that has been teased since episode 1. And that is Eugene. Now Eugene does exist in the game, but we never get to see him, only for you to explore his hideout. The last promise that Jewel made to Ellie settles the doubts that she was about to tell Jewel anyway. But instead of Jewel explaining the truth, she was met the same lie that Jewel told her years ago, and that confirms it by saying, "You swore instead of you promised." Now I'm gonna be going to spoiler territory. Now you can skip to the conclusion or episode 7. Now my only problem with this episode is that I think this part should not be early on in this series. The reason why it is because in the game, it is specifically placed to be in the ending where Ellie finally gets to be with Abby and has the opportunity to kill her easily. But she didn't, because she remembered the final moments with Jewel, and after all those lies, she would be willing to forgive Jewel. But I also know why they put it on the show early. It is just simply theming. I mentioned that the constant strive of improvement is the theme of this episode, but it fits very well on this scene, because not only they had the good final moments together, but also Jewel would be proud of Ellie, because she did a little better than him. So we have come to the finale, and here I say, it's bad. Like, I swear, this edit should not fit well in The Last of Us. Alright, now I'm starting to believe if Pedro Pascal isn't in the episode, the writers just forget who these characters really are. Alright, let's start with Jesse. He's a bit of an asshole in this series. Okay, to be fair, this change made him more, I don't know, realistic? Because in the game, we really don't know what Jesse's goals are or aspirations. He was just there with us because he sees us as a friend, and we see him as our older brother that we can rely on.
But Jesse is human too. He can have his own goals and aspirations.
You gotta understand that in The Last of Us, Jesse will die. The writers should have known about this because his moments with Ellie is not gonna be for a while. And same to the audience where we don't have time to give a crap about his dreams and aspirations. We just don't have the time, and the story is designed that he is just gonna die. It's either that he can be the person that was there for Ellie, empathizing her on this deep, relentless pursuit to find Abby, or he can bitch about being the next Maria. Your choice. What really bothers me is how this ruins the moment where they are about to separate. The way they separated is
Jesse
wanted to go to Tommy and
Ellie
wanted to go after Abby. In the show, Jesse confirmed that it was never his interest to come with Ellie.
I voted no.
Extremely different from the game.
I would have come, you know, if you told me you were leaving.
Because it was not like the best interest in the community? Huh? Why would you? Like, what are you saying? This addition makes sense, but it's so terrible. This only now makes it look like that they genuinely hate each other, but this version of Jesse is so unlikable. What they did in the game instead is how it complements the desire of Ellie's pursuit. Because the moment they disagreed, we can see Ellie begins to lose herself. Not only acting selfishly about Tommy's safety, but rather starts to become irrational, saying going after Abby is the best way to save Tommy. Now Jesse has to choose between being there for Ellie or going after Tommy. This is how it should be done. Ellie pushing away the only people that cared for her, who empathized her, going through all this ridiculous shit just to get what she wants. Like, I don't know, man. It is a waste, to be honest. I believe so because The Last of Us has one of the best stories that has ever been written, and it has the opportunity to present it on an audience that has never played the game before. But instead we get something like Ellie charging through because she saw some kid getting taken by the WLF. Like, in what world would you think that you are able to win against them? Like, you're suddenly a badass now? Like, what are we doing? Anyways, I hope you guys liked the analysis that I did. And I'm sorry that it took too long to make this video. But if you made it this far, make sure to stay tuned and subscribe, because my next video will be all about the game Dredge. And the video is gonna be all about the entirety of the story. No DLC though, just the original story. It is a really good game. So yeah, be sure to stay tuned, and also comment what do you think about the video. Do you like it? Do you hate it? Also comment the things that I missed, your thoughts about the show. And yeah, just fight it out. Just fight it out.